seminar series. Just for Dr. Busek saying, this is what called seminar series, where we can take outside speakers who are non-corporate people to come so that we give our students a well-rounded perspective beyond just academics and what we want to corporate. And so we are very happy to have eminent people like you. He's a special coordinator of the Stability Pact for Southeastern Europe and Austria. He was born in Vienna in 1941 and received his law degree from the University of Vienna. He was also chairman of the Australian Youth Council. He began his professional career as legal advisor to the Association of Parliamentarians of the Australian People's Party. He then served as Secretary General of the Australian Federation of Trade and Commerce. In 1975, he was appointed Secretary General of the Australian People's Party and elected Member of Parliament. He was a city councillor, won the seat of Deputy Mayor of Vienna, a position he held until 1987. He was appointed Minister of Science and Research in April. In 1994 until 95, Dr. Busek was Minister for Education. He was elected Chairman of the Australian People's Party in 91 and appointed Vice Chancellor of Australia from 91 to 95. He has delivered many lectures on domestic and foreign topics and has participated in the conferences in Austria and abroad. He has honorary doctorates from a number of universities. He is a visiting professor at Duke University and the University of Agriculture in Vienna. In 2004, he became the Vice Chancellor of the Technical Rector of Technical College of Salzburg, Vienna. From January 2003, he was the Special Coordinator of the Stability Pact for Southeastern Europe, a position he covered until the handover of the mandate to the Regional Cooperation Council. Without any ado, I'll request Dr. Busek to come and
and gentlemen, I think it's quite a pleasure to be with you and quite an honor so far. If you allow me to add concerning the curriculum vitae, the CV you heard, the real background speaking about the European crisis, a chance for new positioning is that in my lifetime, I'm writing a few days, 71, I went through different shapes of Europe. Also not only in the political life, but also concerning economy and business. I think it is a tremendous change which happened in my lifetime. Just to give you a very primitive overview, I was born at a time where my home country, Austria, was not existing. It was a part of Nazi Germany and involved in the Second World War. And then I grew up where Austria was re-established, becoming a neutral country at the western rim of the Iron Curtain, and the economy was very much influenced by this. Because you have to imagine that the Iron Curtain had the impact that everything what was on the eastern rim of our world was not very interesting. I think the difference is Austria is a small country, tiny, I think it's like a stamp of the map, but not more. But the differences from the west to the east were tremendous. I think the westerners in Austria were comparatively richer than the easterners. There was no business, there was no investment, and so on and so on. So far, I think that this is a lifetime where I grew up, and one of the jobs I had to do in different positions also connected with the business community, the question of economy and decision making on this subject. I think it was here of great importance. The changes within Europe. I think Austria is not a very important country, but the impact of the changes in Europe on Austria were quite big one. So far you might understand Europe is a divided continent. Even I want to exceed a little bit, Europe was not existing We had Western Europe and we had Eastern Europe. Western Europe connected with the United States for sure, trying to find its own way. The European integration, the European Union was invented on this western side, and Eastern Europe, part of the Soviet Empire, and economically also very much connected. I think there was really no exchange. Austria was one of the rare countries having a certain kind of trade with this eastern part in our neighborhood, because we are partly surrounded by this. But the biggest figure ever concerning export-import was around 8% of the whole trade world. 8%. This you have to understand, and beg your pardon for going back to history, that Austria has been a part of the Habsburg Empire, which was bigger and everything was connected economically. My parents, my grandparents grew up in an economic area which was for sure bigger, and it was quite natural that they were commuting. From my lifetime until 1989, this was ended. And so far it was a tremendous change of orientation to the West, only to the West, and we are now relearning since more than 20 years how to look in every direction. And you might imagine, and you studying economy and looking to the business community, to management, this is a tremendous change. So far, the title about which I shall speak is European Crisis, a Chance for a New Position. If you allow me to tell you, I think, something about the crisis, or even I may say about different crises, because we are for sure in a mixture of crises. But first of all, I want to say my approach not only to the world crisis, but to the crisis itself, you might wonder, is a positive one. A crisis is a very positive moment in the development. I think going back to the meaning of the word crisis, it's coming from the old Greek language. The basis was krino, and in translation it means to judge and to decide. Crisis is an area where you have to judge in which situation you are, and you have to decide in which direction you want to go. So far, a crisis is positively understood. If you are looking to the media, and I had the opportunities in the last days to also to do it to the Indian media as far as they are in English, I think there's a reporting about a lot of crises in Europe, and it is always done in a very negative way. For sure, the Eurozone crisis or the Greek crisis have a bad impact on the situation, but it is also a chance, I think, to turn around and to learn something out of this. So I think the first crisis in which we are, we learned out of history, and after the Second World War, learning out of two world wars, the European integration process was done. It is a result of a learning process. A learning process that this map of different countries, and I think Europe is the one area where the splits are really heavy. The number of countries, I think, is tremendous big. I think led to the European integration process. I think even the problem is bigger. It's a second kind of a crisis, because the changes of 1989 created a lot of new states. You won't believe it. Again, Austria is a small country. In our neighborhood, 23 new states appeared. 23 new states appeared. I think it was quite a subject in schools. You have to learn which countries are existing. Even if you are doing a riddle, what is the capital of? So first of all, we have to consider what is a country, what is the capital, and so on and so on. But this is happening. We are living in a big country. This is happening on short distances. I think it is even changing the feeling for. In the time of the division, East-West, some capitals were seen by geography western from Vienna, the capital of Austria. But in the feeling, belonging to another system, they were eastern. Now I think we are recovering on this and learning the map in a real right way, how it is really situated. I think this is the first crisis, and we have not yet finished our learning on this subject. Because on the one side you can say, okay, fine, after a long time they are now able to do a democracy, the borders are open, you can commute, business is possible, you can invest, and so on and so on. But for sure, I think you learn through this something in your head, another behavior, another estimation, some prejudges, a lack of knowledge, and so on and so on. So you have to understand, Europe is relearning itself. I think this is a very important question, difficult to understand from outside. I think we have to imagine if India would have existed for a longer time, all your states separately. You have own governments, but you have a central government. But we have had no central government, and different governments, and a different behavior, and a different culture, and a different way of doing business, and so on and so on. That's a tremendous important process, and here I say, I'm admiring those who are doing it for a longer time. It is a success story, and it is still a success story. This nonsense which you can read in newspapers and in the reports, Europe will break into pieces and so on and so on, I think it won't happen. There are a lot of difficulties, but there's no alternative. So I may tell you what is a driving force for it is economy and business. Because looking to the globalization process, I think everybody has only in Bangalore to tell it to you is a real nonsense, because it's a reality. You can do it only in a global way. And in a cooperation here by the European business community, I think to be a part of this globalized world, to position Europe in this context. I think beside relearning Europe, first point, I think the second point is that we have to learn how to do it in the way of Europe together, and how to do it as a partner of the globalization process. Within the global world, which role might the business community, which role might Europe play in this context? And I think here we are also amidst this learning process. It's not quite clear. Where did we succeed? I think we succeeded concerning business and economy. Because in the past, having been a part of the Eastern world, the Soviet system and so on, there are huge chances of investment. And it is a tremendous change, because I do not know if you are aware how life in communism was. Everything was regulated. I think the business was not very strong, was not very vivid, there was no individual responsibility, and so on and so on. And I think what has to be invented was ordered from the Communist Party down. And I think if we had no idea, it was not invented. It was forbidden. It's a very primitive way to explain it, but I think it worked in a certain direction in such a way. That was finished. And so far it was a chance of the companies of the western part of Europe and all over the world, I think, to go to this eastern part, I think, for improvement of this situation. I think this is one of the big chances still existing, because the job is not yet done. If you are going to some capitals in this eastern part, Budapest, Prague, Warsaw, and so on, I can name a long list, there's a feeling you are in our western world. I think you can get everything from McDonald's to fashion from Versace, and so on and so on. But really down to the ground, it's not yet. But, and that's the other side, for example, a tremendous chance for even my small country. Some companies in Austria became regional players. I think in my youth they were tiny companies. I think we have one bank, it's named Raiffeisen, you can forget it immediately. But now they are a regional player in Central, Eastern, Southeastern Europe and Russia. And they are, in comparison to the home country of Raiffeisen, a huge bank. Or there's a savings bank also, same development. We had a petrol chain. It was a tiny chain, having petrol stations in Austria and some places, not very big. Now they are working on a gas pipeline even until Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Iraq, with the Americans allowing it to Iran, which is, I think, one of the difficulties now existing. I think, as I grew up, I was never considering that OMB, that's the name of the company, might be a regional player. It was not possible to imagine what's here existing. And not necessarily to do it, to tell it to you here in the management school, that had a big impact, not only on the different companies, but in general business life and how the things are going. It has also some consequences, and I don't want to tell you only the big success stories. I think we have to learn also that migration plays a very important role. Because by the quality of education in our neighborhood, I think a lot of the youngsters are looking for a better education in my country, in Germany, in France, in Great Britain, in the United States, and so on and so on. And I think it is quite an issue to bring the right education, management schools, for example, in this part. I'm connected with the Federation of the Management Schools in Central and Eastern Europe. I think it is a huge institution. I think mainly it was started by American influence. You know, the business schools done by the Americans, there was a great impact sometimes on the situation. But now they are self-governing and self-responsible, which I think is quite developed. For sure they are connected with some programs. I think to have enough teachers, to get teachers who are also based in the countries where the schools are, because only to get teachers from outside, okay, you can gain experience and you can learn on them, but I think it's also necessary to know the landscape and so on. And so on. Also, and this might be the next field of the crisis, you need specific investments, and specific investments are only possible if they are done by the right enterprises, and with the right knowledge, and the right research, and so on and so on. What are here the main problems? Our infrastructure in the western part of Europe is quite developed, and so far okay, concerning railroads, highways, and so on and so on. In the eastern part it's missed. That's a huge opportunity for investment. A lot of business is possible in the future. Other thing, ecological links. Communism was not very much looking to ecological matters. So far, I think they are learning on the subject. May I say the so-called neoliberal and new capitalism enterprises are also not very much looking to ecology. So that's a general problem of public discussion. I think to push it really further. I give you one primitive example. Vienna is situated on the river Danube. The river Danube is the second largest river in Europe. The largest is Volga in Russia. The second is Danube, and the third is the river Rhine in the west. We have now a big problem. I think you may understand that 10 different states are situated along the river Danube. And if you're putting from where the water is coming, it is even 14 different states. I'm a little bit involved in it to bring the governments together, 14 states. I think is a really horrible job. Because we have no entity deciding on the top what has to be done. You have to do this, you have to do this. No. I think we have to wait until they are prepared to do it. And I think we have to do a lot of talks and to convince them, and then the government is changing, and then there's a crisis, and whatever and whatever you can imagine. I think this is also the situation on which we are learning and have to prepare ourselves. And here I think, by the example of the river Danube, a certain part of globalization is coming in. Because the Danube is starting in Western Germany and is going until the Black Sea. And by transport it has a big impact not only the Black Sea and the eastern part of the Mediterranean. And if you're looking for the transport connections, here you have the connections through Turkey, Caucasus, Central Asia. If you're going to the north, through Russia in the direction of China, and so on and so on. I think a global impact is existing here. But we have to learn this, and it has to be done, and we have to gain cooperation on this, that it is possible step by step. But seen by business, seen by economic development, it is a huge chance here for sure in this direction. I think I can mention other fields being important for business. One of the very good developments by the European integration is the close cooperation on research development. We have the so-called framework programs. We are now closing the 7th and opening the 8th framework program. Cooperation in research is mainly done on this level between the member states of the European Union. We have I was deeply impressed preparing myself for the visit in India. It's a long list of programs of the European Union with India, for example, common programs. Well, I may tell you, speaking about myself, I'm Jean Monnet professor. A Jean Monnet professorship is given by the European Union for those professors who are running around in Europe, teaching about Europe, different subjects, and so giving a lecture on this subject. That's extremely important because it needs exchange. And exchange, I think, is of great importance. Just to give you a glance on the history of the universities for Europe. The universities in Europe were founded at the end of the Middle Ages, in the starting Renaissance. And they were really European. Why? Because the teaching and the learning was done in Latin language. It was already a dead language, but for the universities it was a vivid language. And the mobility of the professors and the mobility of the students was quite a very great one. I think in Delhi I was driving on the Copernicus road, for example. I think if you are looking to the life of Copernicus, I think he was traveling around in Europe. I think it was in the 17th century. I think they had no airplane and so on, but they did it. Here I may say, as a former Minister for Science and Research, if I had to move a professor in Austria itself from one place to the other, it was very difficult. But I would have this legislation and so on, I think we did it in an easier way. And we are now, by these European Union programs, relearning this. They have some impressive names, Erasmus, Socrates, and so on. And they are a huge contribution for common development in Europe, and also of the development of science. I think I can continue endless on this, what we are learning, that it is in common. But there are also negative sides of crisis. I think it's not logical, but I think it is the media and the public so far have to start with this. You can read a lot about the Eurozone crisis, financial crisis, and so on. May I say the following? The European integration process is a huge project. It's always named as a peace project, and that's a reality. If you're looking to the European history books, I think before the European Union was founded, we have wars everywhere, one after the other. And I think since the existence of the European Union, or you can say since 1945, we had no wars. We had some small wars, I think bad enough, in the Balkans, with the downfall of Yugoslavia into pieces. But I'm always saying these were wars which are rooting back to the 19th century. I think we did the discussions which we did in the 19th century, in the 20th century, bad enough, 100 years too late as a problem. But I think this is a success story. But what was not done is, by creating common instruments like the euro, to create also the background. Because if you want to do a common currency, you have to have a common taxation system, you have to do a common budgeting, and you have to have the rules between the money system, banks, and so on and so on. We created the European Central Bank, but it is not a national bank in your sense. You have it as a Federal Reserve Board in the United States. It is always said, okay, don't be sad about the Federal Reserve Board was, as far as I know, created in 1912. The different US states, unbelievable today, had a different value of the dollar before. And since the Federal Reserve Board in 1912 they have now the common value of the dollar. It's an interesting process. I think we don't have so much time that we can do it in this way within the European Union. We are developing this. And this is important of the Greek crisis. The Greek crisis in general is not important, because Greece is 2% of the GDP of the European Union. That's nothing. Huh? But by the example of the handling of the Greek crisis, it's coming out what we are missing in the European Union. And this is also, again, beg your pardon for repeating this, a learning process in which we are. The politicians have to learn what is necessary and what should be done. What is the background of the difficulty, to say it quite straight? I think we have not yet learned to be together as Europeans. I think especially the politicians, and to make it a little bit narrow, especially the national governments, are convinced I want to do my job alone and I want to keep the other out. And if the other wants something, then you have to follow my rules. I'm the one who is deciding. If you don't believe it, read the news. Merkel and Sarkozy are always coming together. I think there's a word in Europe, Merkozy. I think they are seen as a unity. You have a little bit to look to the map. France, Western, Germany, maybe in the midst. The eastern part of Europe is not present in this process. It's creating a lot of tensions here within. But they are more experienced, I think more free for a longer time, and so on and so on. So far they are trying to lead. May I say, nearly without success until now, because if you are looking to the media even, they are meeting every week. And at the end of the meeting they think, we found the solution, job is done, everything is safe. But at the end of the week everybody is saying, we have to do a new meeting to discuss about the things that are going on. That's the lack of common regulations. So far we have a European Union, excellent. I'm a fan of this European integration process, but we don't have the instruments. Or to say it in a very primitive way, we have no European government. There's the Commission, but the Commission is very much depending on the decision-making of the member states. And until 27, quite soon, 28 governments of the member states are coming together. I think it lasts quite long until they are able to do a common decision. Because everybody is looking to him or herself. I think, is it favorable for me? And they are not considering, I think, the common value. What has to be done in common for the Europeans. I think that's a big problem. So far, if you can read that some are saying, okay, the Greeks shall go out of the Eurozone, I think it will be a horrible decision, not only psychologically for the future, being in a community, but also by economy, because somebody has to pay the bill. And those who are giving loans to Greece are not the Greek citizens in majority. I think they are the European banks, institutions, and so on and so on. With Greece inside and without Greece inside, I think we would lose a tremendous amount of money, and it would have an impact on other weaker parts like Portugal, Italy, Spain, and so you can read it in the newspaper. But they missed is to create a system of mutual responsibility and solidarity. I think this part was not done. So far we are in midst. On the one side, in a very good development of unity, having a common Europe, and with the rest, a big rest of disparity, where the things are not really working. Who is a driving force in the positive sense? I think the business community, because I think they are not anymore looking for borders. Because this is a global situation, not only the European one, because you can find all the companies everywhere. Passed here by Bosch and Ford and so on and so on. I think going to the streets of Bangalore, you can see what the impact of globalization is in the reality. And so far, I think it is even for Europe tougher. We are depending on each other in a very clear way. And so far I may say the financial crisis, the euro crisis and so on is not existing. We have a political crisis. The crisis of decision making by the politicians. What we don't have, to say it also in a very straight way, we don't have a real European public. Because I think living in democracies, and thanks God, I think the European Union is a democratic institution. I think you need a public, otherwise democracy is not working. If you know the history of democracy, it was created in the marketplace in Athens 2,500 years ago, and I think what is the sense of the marketplace? Both are standing together and are shouting, crying, commenting, and so on and so on, and then decision making. And so far, I think you need a marketplace for the European Union to be able to do decision making. I'm always making a nasty joke, maybe it's difficult to understand for you, because I was running to the European TV stations. You should make a talk show between the Europeans, because the simultaneous translation is already invented. You can do it easily. I got a very silly answer. They said to me, no, we cannot do it, but then we have to divide the advertisement, which is happening here. We might lose money. An argument. So far, I'm always saying we have only one European talk show existing. You may know it. It is the Eurosong contest. Maybe it's also known here. This year it will be done in Azerbaijan, being a part of Europe. We have to relearn it, that it is Europe. Why is this a talk show? You can forget the songs. There's always done a voting about the songs. And interestingly enough, you can see where the sympathies are. Who is voting for whom, or who is voting against whom. That's mirroring also the situation and what we have to do for elections. Beg your pardon, it is a very primitive comparison, but I think it's showing a little bit in which situation here we are. So far, I may say, I'm really optimistic that we are coming closer, because otherwise Europe would not exist. There are also some philosophers even saying, I think Europe might fall into pieces. Well, we have a German philosopher, Peter Sloterdijk, he's always saying, what is Europe? Europe is only an appendix of the Asian continent. If you're looking to the map, it's not so wrong, I have to confess. So far, I think we are in a situation, and that's my hope, that it is created, where we have to find ourselves. And I'm saying this not while I'm here at the management school. That's a tremendous role of the industry, the business community, and so on, because you are preparing the ground. I think the common language of the so-called lingua franca in Europe after the downfall of the Iron Curtain is English. Because it's the only possibility that we can understand each other. The Germans always try to push through German, but it didn't work. In the past it was the French. Sometimes the Russians are trying to show up in this direction. But I'm always saying, I told it before, your professor, I think we are speaking in English, which is always not understood by professors of Oxford, because we are not understanding them. But I think this is a language, a globalized language, which for sure has to develop. And if you are looking to our technical society and to the technology, I think here we are coming together. And we have one real power, which is leading us to each other. I think it is a mobile phone. It is telecommunication, it is internet, and so on and so on. That's creating new kinds of society. Personal, beg your pardon, I was a politician for a very long time. I'm really also convinced that the kind of democracy will change by internet. We have in the recent times some developments which are very impressive. Initiatives in Europe did it by the internet to create decision making. In the Arab Spring, I think the mobile phone had a great importance, calling all those together to come together at Tahrir place in Cairo and so on and so on. I think we are here at the beginning of a process. It's very much based on business, it's very much based on management. That's a political role which the business community has in reality. May I say sometimes not so much seen by the business community itself, but the political implications are tremendous. What are the consequences? I think we need common rules. All this banking crisis existing, we have to create the rules. Not only in Europe, I think it would not fit to the problem. We need it on the global level for sure. For financial transactions, common rules. What banks are doing. About places that the taxes are lower. That's one of the tough discussions we have. We are always blaming the Liechtensteiners, Switzerland, or Jersey Islands, or the other places, or something like that. Some of the islands, I think, are very famous for. But as long, I think, as you have the situation that you can evade taxes and have no common regulations, it will be always very difficult and will be close to crime, what is here existing. It will last very long. I'm not so optimistic that we are able to do it from today to tomorrow, but this is a very interesting challenge which has to be done. So far, speaking about the European crisis, a chance for a new positioning, we are getting a younger generation, especially in the former eastern parts of Europe, who is very much understanding this. Because I think they have to go a long way from the past of their parents and grandparents and communism and authoritarian regimes and so on, now to an open society. And in this context, I'm extremely optimistic. And it is done mainly by economy, by the business community, by enterprises, by technology, by research, and so on, because these communities are already existing. Thank you very much that you are listening to me, and I'm looking forward to questions.
US tension caused a lot of problems. Do you see the US-Russia tension flaring up again and causing problems in Europe?
The answer is a little bit longer. First of all, on the Russian side, they are doing one mistake. They are too much looking to NATO. I think if you are discussing with the Russians, not only with the politicians, but also intellectuals, researchers, and so on, NATO is a danger. I think NATO is not anymore a danger because it's weaker and weaker. And I think the function of NATO is not really existing anymore. Second, to be quite open, I'm a fan of the Americans because they did a lot after the Second World War in my own country and in Europe, but so far I'm positive. But the United States are also important. And I think they are not the only one, the only policeman in the world, as it was always said. I think we are getting a multipolar world. Here, the Americans might be one place, the Russians might be one place, India, China, Brazil, as it said, and it will not end with the so-called BRIC states. I think it will continue. It is a nonsense believing here the world is stopping. So far, I think it is a tremendous change. Being visiting professor at the US University, my impression is the Americans are learning that their role is very much changing. It has changed that they are withdrawing from Europe, for example. That makes it easier also for the Russians because they always feel endangered by the presence of the Americans in Europe, which is a real nonsense. And let's wait and see how the things are going, especially in the Pacific, concerning China and so on, and the engagements of the Americans. I think we might come to a world of a coexistence with a certain competition, solutions, and so on. Here we are for a very long time not at the end of the road. I think it is really moving forward. Again, and I want to repeat what you asked, the Russians are too much concerned about the Americans. It might be also a result of the medias. I'm looking to the Russian television, this English program which it is, I think they are always concentrating what the Americans are saying. They are saying the contrary. So I think it is really more differentiated. But you have to understand that this I'm saying in favor of the Russians, they also in the learning process. I think I'm totally against always to blame the Russians. They are not doing really democracy. They had never a democracy in history because the Tsarist regime was an authoritarian regime. Stalin was authoritarian. I think they have to learn on the subject. And even the demonstration against Vladimir Putin, I think I impressed me deeply. I think he will be re-elected as a president for me, without any doubt. But that it is happening is a total change in the possibilities here existing in Russia. And don't forget the Russians, and we have to have some understanding for it, have big problems. They are living in an overaged society. They are, besides one European country, the most overaged society here in Europe. The birth rate is extremely low. And that's the reason why they feel endangered by the Muslims. Concerning these parts, Chechnya, Caucasus along, and so on, what's happening here. And that's creating a certain political approach by the Russians too. I think Syria is not a danger, therefore can be in favor. But they want to be also a counterpart against an Islamic development. Because for the moment, nobody knows in which direction Egypt is going, or the Gulf states are going, or Libya is going. I think here we have a lot of open questions. We are living in a very interesting world. Please?
See, Greece is just 2% of the EU economy, if you see. But it's not just Greece that we are hearing. We are hearing Portugal, Spain. These are pretty large economies. So it can't be as small as, what you probably just said.
I think Greece is a small economy, Portugal too. It's more difficult with Spain and Italy. But obviously, as far as we can see the figures, there's some improvement in both countries. And the Portuguese, even besides Spain and Italy, the Portuguese even are in the moment improving. The real problem with the Greeks, I don't want to blame the Greeks, but I think it is a country full of administration. I think 25% of the employees are state employees. The political system was working the way the one party is the government, and they're putting in a lot of their people. And then the other government is coming, is not kicking out those who are in, but is adding something. And so far, I think it's very difficult to finance. And you have to understand, besides the north of Greece, they have really no industry. They were living out of tourism. And that's not enough. So far, you can read these dirty jokes. I think we shall sell the Acropolis or something like that, or some islands, which will not really work. What Greece really needs, and it is sometimes said, a kind of a Marshall Plan. I think it makes no sense to do only the cuts. I think you have to do also a program creating investment and improvement of the situation for sure. But in general, Greece might not win the European Union or the Europeans.
How do you see the role of UK in the ecology of European continent? Because two major observations. UK chose to have its own currency when the single euro dream was being rolled out, right? Also at times it has very vehemently expressed its views, which are not necessarily in line with the views of other EU leaders. How do you see the situation henceforth?
That's a very interesting question. I think first of all we have to understand that out of a long-lasting tradition, the English or UK is not feeling to be European. I think they are island, and if I ask somebody from my generation in London if he's going to the continent, he's telling me I'm going to Europe. I'm blaming him always as saying, why Europe? No, I'm going to Europe. So far, I think concerning this tunnel, which is connecting here France and the United Kingdom, You can say, I think, what God has divided by the sea, the human being shall not connect. It is seen as a certain fundamental sin by some British. In the younger generation, it's improved. The second problem is the British, out of their glorious past, are really convinced they can do everything alone. And it is a long-lasting tradition of foreign politics in the United Kingdom always to change the sides. If a side is successful, then they always went there. My Austrian history came with long stories. I think we went always on the side of France against Austria, on the side of Austria against France, and so on and so on. So we had a certain way commuting, which makes a sense seen from them, because they want to have the control about the continent here from outside. And this they have internalized. I think it is that additional thing. So far, it was completely right, as the European Economic Community was a success, to say we want to join us. This was done. General de Gaulle, if you might remember, being president of France, was totally against. And I think he did a referendum on the subject, and he failed because in France there was a majority, a small majority, but it was in favor. Maybe the arguments of the old general were a little bit strange, because it was like we had a 100 years war between France and England, long time ago. The consequence of today is that the British, and every British government is not really believing that the European Union has an impact on the United Kingdom. They are convinced that the United Kingdom has an impact on the European Union. But, and here it's coming up a new reality, Cameron is asking for being involved in Eurozone questions. Even the British pound is not part of the Eurozone. But he's saying it has an impact on us. This is a consequence of common Europe, even if you are being an outsider. And those who are really pushing for a stronger political role of the English government in this case is the City of London. And here I may say, I don't want to blame my English friends, but the City of London is more deciding than the whole British government. I think Labour and Conservative, it is quite the same. Because one thing happened, and it might be a consequence out of the colonial past. I think England has not really a strong industry now. I think they closed nearly everything. Even on agriculture, they are depending on Denmark. There's no production. The only production they have is a service industry by the City of London. And that's difficult. And the other difficulty is a reality check. Because sometimes, as an alternative to the European Union, they are behaving like the 51st state of the United States. Decision making is done there. They were always the first. You remember concerning Iraq? Tony Blair, yes. Concerning Iraq, I think if the Americans are saying, we are also. That's one of the problems of the English. It is heavily discussed in England, in a certain serious way, and the coalition government between the Conservatives and the Liberals is under tensions, because the Liberals are more pro-Europe, a part of them are more pro-European than the other. And this is under development. It's a very interesting question, because as far as I know, the mood between the European member states is, okay, if the Brits are convinced they have to make difficulties, then they can leave. But also during Cameron very outspoken, we don't want to leave, we want to stay in. And so far it is a typical nationalistic battle, you have to do what I want. Vice versa, some of the European Union are saying to him, you have to do what we want. And again, I'm repeating, it's a learning process. And interesting enough, he has some internal problems now with traditional parts of the United Kingdom, with the Scots. Because the Scots are moving in the direction of independence. In the background of their oil sources they have, They are a poor country without any doubt, but here they can earn some money. And it is very interesting enough in which direction it's going. I never met so convinced Europeans as the Scottish. But their conviction concerning Europe means against London.
I've got two questions. One is, how do you see Germany's role in the future of Europe?
One, I didn't get it acoustics.
Okay. I've got two questions for you. One is the role of Germany in the future. With a lot of European countries falling aside, German people at one point in time would have a political pressure on their political class to have a stronger, either get out of the euro or have a stronger say in the euro. So how do you see that in the future? And secondly, there are new states coming into the European Union. What are their fears coming into the European Union?
For the first question, I think that's a very interesting one. The general line of every German government since the beginning of the European integration process was always a very positive European. I think the background, thank you very much. The background of this is the fact that they want to show that they are not anymore this German we know out of the world wars. I think we want to be integrated, we are peaceful, and so on and so on. I think the burden of the historical past for the Germans is a big one, and sometimes also understood by them in this direction. I think some behaviors, for example, that they were not prepared to intervene in Libya was coming out of this, we are keeping up the wars. And the discussion if they sent some support to Iraq and Afghanistan was very tough in Germany. We want to keep out of war because we did a lot of mistakes and horrible things here in the past. On the other side, the German economy is quite strong. They have a certain tendency, and here you have to listen carefully to me. As an Austrian, I will tell you why. We have sometimes a tendency to tell everybody we are the best. And that's creating, for sure, difficulties. Germans are by mentality, especially those who are based in Berlin, very straight. I think our tendency, we are also speaking German, but we are more soft. And they are very directly. I think it's not always meant in such a way, but the way of expression, I think it is a kind of a national mentality is for sure existing. That creates some problems, especially, for example, in Greece. There's some horrible consequences because they were showing Angela Merkel in the uniform of the SS, which I think is very unfair because she's coming out of the former communist part of Eastern Germany. I think to bring her for such a behavior was not really fair. But this is sometimes here also used. I think it is quite necessary to create a more democratic system for choosing responsibilities within the European Union. Because for sure we have a European Parliament. The problem is that the parliamentarians are elected on the national level. We have no European parties. We have national parties, and if I'm voting for an Austrian parliamentarian, I'm voting for the national list of his party. There should be a European list. Even more, there should be a European government. Here, that's one of the weaknesses, because the governments of the member states do not want to deliver their power to common institutions. That's the reason why Merkel and Sarkozy are always coming together and deciding. But I think by principles, it should be done by the European Commission, it should be done by the European Council, not by the both. So far, the so-called nation state is learning that they have to give up power to European institutions, on which they are not really prepared. That is even one more consequence, which is very bad. Those who are chosen for European responsibility are not the strongest. I think the governments are looking together, let's take a weak person, and we have no problems. We will tell him what he has to do. So far, I think the discussions should be that Barroso and Rompuy are coming together to decide. No, Merkel and Sarkozy are coming together. Here you can see the difficulties. That's a temptation for the Germans also. Hopefully, I think we are in general able to learn on this process. Second question concerning enlargement. The European Union is not yet completed. To tell it in a very short way, I think I'm really convinced that the rest of the Balkans have to be taken. I think it is so small that it is not really a problem by quantity. And it is the only possibility to create a stability there. Because this is an area where there have been always a lot of wars. Not only by the peoples living of the Balkans, was a war also outside. From the Russians, from the Austrians, from the Germans, I think the warfare was brought very much there. I'm also convinced that after a longer time, Ukraine might be a part of the European Union until they are able to create a real democratic system, which is for the moment not existing. I think they are on the way, but it's a long way to go. And also Belarus, which is a primitive communist dictatorship, that might be last even longer. You might ask, what about Turkey? I think that's one of the main mistakes. It was created by the Americans because Turkey had a great importance for NATO. If the Soviet Armada was going out from the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, the Turks were sitting there counting ships and phoning to Washington. That has totally changed. The Turks are going their own way. I may say, from my feeling, the Turks are a regional player concerning Central Asia, concerning Arab countries. They have some special relations to the Russians, and so on and so on. And if you are going to Turkey, and you shall do it because it's an interesting development, it's a big positive development, and you are asking the Turks, are you eager to become a member of the European Union? They will tell you no. Because they have the feeling they are a regional player, and they are important on their feet, and why do we need the European Union? So far the discussion is running in a very silly way in some of the member states of the European Union. So far I think this is enlarged Europe. If you allow me to add, what we have to learn also is to create systems of neighborhood. There is a pre-existing Eastern Neighborhood program, but it's not really working. It was directed to Russia, Ukraine, and Central Asia, but it's not very effective. And the rest we are doing in bilateral ways. For example, meeting India, European Union, China, European Union, Brazil, European Union, and so on and so on. That's not the system. I think also we are learning that the world is a little bit bigger than Europe. I think one of the main tremendous changes is that a part of our society is still living in an Eurocentric view. It's going down. I think in the younger generation it has totally changed, but I think by the majority of the politicians in Europe, they are still convinced that Europe is everything. It's also coming out, in bigger pardon, I allow myself to say in India, out of the colonial past of some countries. I think within the European discussions, the French are saying, we are la grande nation, and so on. The British are saying, Great Britain rules the waves, and so on and so on. That's still coming up, but it is not anymore reality. The Russians are saying, since the time of the Tsar and this Stalin, I think we decided. Nonsense. In a certain way, the Turks are coming up, some of them saying, Ottoman Empire. We were extremely peaceful. This is reaching, the Turk peoples are reaching front too. I think you can imagine they are coming close to their neighborhood, for sure. Only the Austrians, we lost our empire a long time ago. We are not telling such nonsense.
One last question.
So it's a kind of a two-part question. First, do you think the crisis is forcing European integration, especially in the light of the fiscal pact that we saw, which most of the Eurozone countries agreed to? Second part, if you just extend this concept, now Eurozone countries, the individual nation states don't have monetary independence. And now they don't even have full fiscal independence. Would you rather have Europe as a country with 27 states than as a continent with 27 nation states?
I think the first question. Can you repeat the nucleus of your question? I think I lost it considering your second question.
Do you think that the crisis is forcing European integration?
Yes.
Having as a natural
The public mood in the majority of the member states is against more European integration. The request of the open questions and the difficulties is forcing into the direction of more integration. I think this is a learning process in the public, for the democracies, and so on, because to say it quite straight, there's no alternative. There must be more integration, or otherwise Europe would not exist. To say it quite bluntly. I think this is a productive result of these crises that we are learning this. I think everybody now is saying, there's too much Europe, but at the end of the day, they know concerning the currency and the economy, we have to cooperate. We are doing polling in Austria every half a year about the European Union. Everything is negative. There's one question: shall we stay in the European Union? 2/3 are in favor of staying in the European Union. I think here you can understand this double mood what is existing. And the second question is partly answered by the first. I think they have to come together, they have to try to get a real good federalism and governments working together. Because also those countries who are not in the Eurozone are connected.